All right, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out today. My name is John Helmholt. I head up Communications and External Affairs for the district. Just again want to thank you all for your continued patience, your understanding, your support. We're now more than 3 weeks into this, and we just appreciate how much this Montessori community has really wrapped themselves around the students, the staff members, supportive of the district. Hopefully you can see that our team acted as swiftly as we could. That Friday when we heard about this, we moved very quickly. We had that last parent meeting the day after, and have been moving real quickly. And so just a hats off and a thanks to you all. We couldn't have flipped this school in essentially 72 hours without your patience, your understanding, the support. Our facilities team, the public safety, our supply, purchasing, everyone is hands on deck for this, and we're going to continue to do so. We know that there are still requests that need to be fulfilled for supplies and materials. We know we still have some ongoing traffic challenges, but know that we're going to continue to monitor that, and we're going to continue to be responsive, and we're going to continue to communicate with you all. Want to emphasize that today is our first parent meeting since the day we learned, right? Since that Saturday a few weeks ago. I want to kind of set some expectations because we still don't have all the answers. There are ongoing investigations, both the internal investigation the district's doing, the investigation that our friends at MIOSHA are doing, that the DEQ are doing. And so we are hopeful that we'll be getting more information, we're getting more results from those investigations. That's when we're going to be able to share even more, particularly around the sampling that still needs to occur at a more rigorous pace. As you might recall, Micro-Air had done that preliminary sample, that was overnighted to a lab out in New Jersey, and we got that 1 ounce of good news that said that came back negative. We know that there are some FOIAs in asking for the results of testing that's been done preliminarily already by the DEQ and MIOSHA. We anticipate that will be shared in the coming days. We also know that and as you know, Micro-Air has chosen to step back. So one of the first big steps, to reiterate what was in one of the communications that we sent before, was as part of the MIOSHA requirements, as part of their investigation, we have to hire a project designer. That project designer was originally Micro-Air, and they have been doing great work for the district for years, but we had a number of parents that reached out. They reached out to us, they reached out to Micro-Air directly and said, hey, we love you, but we really think you ought to step back from this. And so Micro-Air took a step back, and this has caused a little bit of a delay. We had to go back out. There's a certified list of these project designers that we had to choose from, and I'm pleased to announce today that Nova Environmental of Ann Arbor, Michigan has been secured as the new project designer. They are going to be in town tomorrow working with Mr. Klomperens and our team. The next step there is for them to develop the project design plan. That plan is going to be submitted to our friends at DHHS and Kent County Health Department. They've committed to working on the sampling protocol to make sure that as we test for asbestos, we're also looking at silica and lead. And I know our friends from the public health departments are going to be able to speak a little bit more to that in the coming minutes here. The other updates here. The Raymond Corporate Investigative Services. I know we shared this with you all in communications. In addition to what the public agencies are doing as their independent investigations, and they'll talk a little bit about their different roles and responsibilities. I think that's part of the outcome today is just helping to raise awareness about what is the different roles and responsibilities of these agencies in these investigations. But in addition to that, we've sought our own independent third counsel and Raymond Corporate Investigative Services. This is a group, these are retired FBI agents. They are on the top of their game, and as that information comes back, they are going to look to seek an accurate timeline of all events to identify and document where any breakdowns occur and in the process and in communications. Once we have that information, we will be fully transparent. That information will be made available to you and to the broader public. Other questions and concerns from the previous meeting was where did this breach occur? Which rooms specifically in the North Park building did this occur? We just recently received the daily construction reports from Chrisman. So we are now analyzing that data. We literally have to go side by side with the asbestos management plan and those daily reports. Our hope is that we will have that information out to you in the coming days. We have not finalized that, but no, we are still working on that. No, we will put together a diagram, a map of the building, and be able to identify specifically what rooms and specifically what occurred. Because some of this, you'll see as we go through it, some were 4x4 cuts, some were on the outside. And so we're still getting the exact data of when construction occurred and in which rooms, and we'll share that publicly as soon as we have more to share. On the materials and supplies, this has been an ongoing question. We have established a process, and we really are going to ask for your help, parents. The teachers, if they have the need for supplies or materials, they should be submitting that to Maureen or Cindy. They are going to work with the district team, and we're working as fast as we can to get these materials. There are some materials we know are essential. There are some materials that we know may be considered by some to be above and beyond. We're going to assess those on a case-by-case basis. That's what Maureen and Cindy and their team are doing. We also know there's many parents that have sought donations. I heard about $4,000 worth of donations, and we are grateful for that. We just ask for your patience, your support, and your coordination, because we really want to channel this back to our school building leadership, as they are there in the trenches. They know day in and day out what the needs are in each and every classroom, and they're going to work with their staff to get that done. All 20 of the big North Park classrooms have sufficient furniture. They've got the beautiful new rugs. They've got plants. These classrooms are warm. They're sunlit spaces. We're doing whatever we can to continue to accommodate, to make it as North Park Montessori-like as we can, knowing that full well that is not going to be the same as what you have in your big building, but we're going to continue to do that. I also want to report that in all 20 classrooms, their teachers are teaching, the students are working, learning is taking place. The students are being exposed to both the traditional Montessori, but also more traditional classroom. We knew this, we shared this right along. We knew that as part of this transition, there's going to be some teaching and learning that is not as Montessori-like as we would prefer it to be. As we get the more materials, the more supplies, it will improve. Also want to point out that we should really plan to remain in this building for the rest of the school year. The timeline for when we do the project design plan, when we do the sampling, when they do any kind of cleanup or decontamination, and then the clearance air testing, this is a good 8 weeks from now. So we want to just put that out there. We're not saying it's official, but we're saying let's all be prepared to go for the remainder of the school year in GRPS University at this point in time. There's another question about makeup days. We have not made a final decision on that. Obviously, the district has 11 snow days. That's a record amount. And right now, the state of Michigan is likely to grant a waiver of 3 days. So we have 9 days that are essentially waived. We have 2 days that we may have to make up. The state of Michigan, or the state legislature right now, is considering legislation that would provide waivers for state of emergency days. And so we know there's potentially 2 to 3 days that were states of emergency, either locally or at the state level. But we're not overly optimistic the legislature is going to get that done in time. So again, stay tuned for that. We are aware of the concern. Obviously, our focus is on teaching and learning. There was a lot of instructional time that was lost this year. A couple days due to this particular construction-related incident, and then 11 days due to Mother Nature. And so we're going to do everything we can to assess the situation, and we'll report back. Whether that's going to be adding days at the end of the year, adding minutes during the day, that's one option, is rather than spread it out. We know that those days at the end of the school year are not necessarily the most productive for teaching and learning. And so how do we make sure that if we do those makeup days, that we're looking at what's in the best interest of teaching and learning and instruction. A new phenomenon is the number of students that are eating breakfast and lunch. We are up almost 50%, I believe, is over 100 more students than normal at the North Park building are doing breakfast and lunch, and so I think that's good news. I just learned about that this morning, and we I know our food service, there were some lines for breakfast and lunch, and so they're going to layer on a few additional staff persons to help make sure the breakfast and lunch goes a little bit more smoothly. Another update on some of the training. This is new information. We have nine members of the Montessori team that are currently untrained, and they have signed up to earn a Montessori training. The training program is a partnership between GRPS, Stepping Stones, Aquinas, and the Center for Guided Montessori Studies. This is going to start this July. So that's just, I know it's unrelated to this, but there's some new information that came out that we wanted to share about the continued commitment to ensuring that we have the highest quality Montessori trained teachers in the area. I would just kind of close it out that we are really proud of what we've accomplished, despite the challenge and the anxiety. You know, hopefully you saw your district and your school doing all hands on deck. We don't want this situation, just like you don't. We are doing everything we can to investigate, to get to the bottom of what caused this, what happened, when did we know about, what did we do about it, and what went wrong. And that's what these investigations, that's both independent as well as the agency, are going to be reviewing. We're going to continue to communicate. Hopefully, if there are different opportunities and means and suggestions that you have for how we can do more and better, we welcome that feedback. I meant to say this earlier, this is being videotaped, and we will be posting that link. It's on our YouTube channel, and we will be posting it to North Park Village, and we'll have, if there's other places we need to post it, we will post it. We're also holding a 3 o'clock briefing with the media today. We wanted this meeting to be with you and about the school. So we did not have the media in this meeting. We will not have them in the evening meeting, but we'll do a separate standalone briefing with the media at 3 o'clock today. And that's really all I have for right now. What I'd like to do is turn it over to Adam London from the Kent County Health Department. If we can, we'll go through the agenda here. We have representatives from the Kent County Health Department, from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. They're going to do a little presentation. And then we have a friend from MIOSHA here as well. They'll talk a little bit about process, protocol, a little bit about asbestos, and a few other public health related items. And then our friends from MIOSHA will talk you through their process and probably reiterating a little bit of what I just shared. And then we'll open it up for questions, okay? All right, thank you.
Thanks, John. Morning, everyone. My name is Adam London. I am the health officer for Kent County and the director of the Kent County Health Department. And I'm joined this morning by Dr. Nurali Bora. Dr. Bora, come on up. I'm going to turn this over to her in just a moment, and she's going to introduce the subject matter experts who are going to speak with you this morning. Before doing so, I just wanted to say a couple of things to you. First of all, I've been in public health at the local level for over 20 years. And in that time, I've seen lots of situations, scary situations, where suddenly, and apparently out of nowhere, a family or a community is presented with a question where the assumptions of safety and security that they had for their families are shaken. And I have seen how organizations respond to those situations in a variety of different ways. Some very positive, and some not so positive. And I can tell you, thus far, in our experience over the past several weeks with GRPS, they have been very transparent with us. They have been a good partner thus far, and I expect that that relationship is going to continue. However, let me also tell you that Kent County, the Health Department, and the other state agencies who are here this morning, they work for you. We work for you, okay? We don't work for GRPS, we work for you, and we are going to continue to pursue our mission of protecting and monitoring and communicating with all of you as we have information that is timely and accurate to share with you. Okay? I want you to know that. I want you to feel confident in that. It's our role, and we've seen, you're going to hear from some agencies this morning, there's kind of two different tracks that these agencies are going down. There's the regulatory track. You're going to hear about MIOSHA and DEQ, who are looking at this from a regulatory perspective, and they have a process. Then there's the public health track, where the Health Department and the Department of Health and Human Services is going to be carefully looking at the exposure data that becomes available to us. We're going to be making assessments based on those data. We're going to be bringing in subject matter experts to share with you and to present to you either in partnership with GRPS or independently, but we're going to bring you the knowledge that we have. We're going to continue to communicate with local providers, and we're going to do whatever screenings or assessments are appropriate based on the information that we have. As you may know, and hopefully everyone knows, we have been offering precautionary lead screening for your children at the health department location at 700 Fuller. And Kathy Zacharias from our department, I think, is going to talk about that in just a little bit. And we will continue to do what we can as information becomes available to us to make sure that you have access to whatever resources that are appropriate based on where this investigation goes. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bora, and she's going to talk a little about who we have this morning to present to you.
Thanks, Adam, and thank you all for being here this morning. So we really understand that uncertainty is difficult, especially when there's anything that could affect the well-being of your child. So while we wait for more sampling results, we've been working with our partners, and we're very grateful to have them here with us today. So we've been working with people from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as a pediatric environmental health specialty unit that's based in Chicago for our region. We've also been working with the ATSDR, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, and the EPA. So with us here speaking today, we have Dr. Joost van Turve, who's a toxicologist with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. He's going to give you an overview of asbestos and health. And then after that, we'll have Kathy Zacharias, who's a registered nurse with the Kent County Health Department. She's going to give some general overview about lead exposure in children and some of the testing that we've been doing as well. We also have some other guests with us from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services here for support and for questions later. We have Dr. Jennifer Gray, who's a toxicologist, and Dr. Priyashi Manani, who is an environmental health epidemiologist. So we, again, as Adam had said, we really want to be transparent and just let you know what we are learning as we learn it. And we hope that today will give you a chance to get some questions answered as well. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. Good morning. My name is Joost van Turve. I'm the toxicologist with MDHHS, and I'll try to give you a brief overview today of what we know from the public health perspective, general overview of asbestos, the things that are out there, and then sort of our future plans for what kind of sampling we're going to do. And then at the end, I'll have some guidance for you about items to take home, but what we can do about the items that were taken home before the school was closed. Oh, was it not good?
Higher, closer.
Thank you. I'm too tall, sorry.
I'm too short.
Yeah. All right, is that better? Fantastic. So here's my outline for today. So what I wanted to do is to start with what we know currently from a public health perspective. So we have this potential disturbance of asbestos-containing material that was in the school. At this point, we don't know the extent of the exposure. We don't know exactly how much was released in the air, those type of things. So it's very unknown still. We can only therefore talk in very general terms of what we know about asbestos and the health concerns that people know are associated with asbestos. So anything I'll talk about today has nothing to do with the situation specifically here. It's a general overview of what people know. At this point, we also have no data yet about the concerns of lead or silica. You're going to hear some terms thrown around today about the testing that we're doing. So there's this thing called bulk sampling. That's the testing of the material itself, the walls, the piping, all these things. So it's very different from what we would need for an exposure assessment, where we have to look at what is in the dust, what is in the air that your children or the teachers might have come into contact with. So that's the big distinction from where the regulatory agencies do their testing. They're more concerned about the materials themselves, whereas we need the data, what is in the air and what is in the dust. So it's a very different distinction. So sampling has been done on the bulk, on the material itself. There's been very little to no testing on the dust or the air. So again, the public health response that we're talking about here is very different from the regulatory response. We're really focused on your children and the teachers in the school, and focus on evaluating the health concerns and the questions that you have. And that's our sole focus here. So we have the Kent County Health Department as well as the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services working on this response. And as mentioned as well, we have federal agencies to offer technical and health assistance to us, such as the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. So to give you a little bit more of an idea of what these agencies do and how they're helping us, so there's this EPA Technical Review Work Group specifically on asbestos. So this is a group comprising of all the different regions of the EPA. So the expertise of the United States is represented in this work group. And they have technical experts, toxicologists, laboratory analysts, legal counsels, risk assessors, chemists, you name it. And they really combine all their knowledge together and can share that with us. So we've consulted with them about the North Park situation specifically, and they've given us some guidance on things that we can expect and things that we can do. So the Region 5 members that we're talking with directly, as well as with the group overall, are Elizabeth Nightingale and Dr. Mark Johnson, ATSCR. And also specifically for pediatric children's health questions, there's the PSHU, the Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Unit, and this is funded by the ATSCR and the EPA to really provide guidance on children's health in environmental health concerns. So these are the subject matter experts that we consult to give to you. So the expectation needs to be set that we really need to evaluate the asbestos in the dust and in the air, and we can't use the samples that have already been taken from a regulatory perspective. So we need to go in and do our own testing through the project designer, as was announced, to really collect these air and dust samples. The real expectation is that the exposure that we're going to be able to assess will really only represent that last day that the school was closed. We don't know what happened before that. We can't tell about the cleanup that's happened or any type of material that was released before the school was closed. So it really would only represent a snapshot in time, just when the school was closed, and that's what we can do some type of exposure assessment on. So that's really it's not a good answer, and it's really only what the data will be able to tell us. So I want to set that expectation very early on in the presentation. So what I can do to you is to sort of provide a general overview or a general background of asbestos. And these are slides that are coming from the ATSCR that we've modified for this specific purpose. And I want to point out that I'm going to give you a lot of information, and I'm very sorry, but we'll have fact sheets at the end. They're going to be up there at the table, so this will give you another general overview to take home with you. This has more information that's really applicable to the situation here, but it gives you the biggest overall picture. So what do we know about asbestos and information for the community? So when I talk about what is asbestos, what are the past and present uses of asbestos, why is asbestos a health concern, and what are some of the diseases that are associated with asbestos? So the asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral. It's made up of these long, tiny fibers that you see in the picture. And they're really very useful from an industrial perspective. They're very heat resistant, they're strong, flexible, and very stable. So that made them very useful materials that in the industry. So they were used from the 1900s to the 1970s when they started figuring out that it was not the best type of material and exposure to people will be harmful. Now, the problem with asbestos is not when it's being used properly, it's when it degrades and when it's disturbed in situations like here. So the loose or crumbling asbestos can release the fibers into the air. They can be breathed in or ingested, and this will then make them become lodged in the lungs, causing toxicity. And what's very important to know is that the symptoms of this exposure don't manifest immediately. It takes years, decades for these diseases that we're going to talk about later to manifest. So nothing that you'll see or in your kids today will really be likely related to this exposure. And especially important to know is that not everybody exposed will develop all these health problems that I'm talking about today. It depends on a lot of different personal health, genetics, type of factors. So again, the exposure of asbestos used in many industries and buildings, so you can find it in many places in the United States. It was used in piping, insulation covering, also known as vermiculite. You might have heard that term. in some of your insulation material, boilers, furnaces, the plaster, and brake pads, actually. And it's only those disturbed materials that are really of health concern here. If it's just properly available in the school or any other building, it's totally safe. It's when you're disturbing the material or it degrades, it's when it becomes a problem. Other sources of asbestos, is interesting to know, is that it's a naturally occurring mineral, so it can be present in the rocks, and that's where it was a big problem during mining as construction, because it could release these asbestos fibers due to it being naturally present in our environment. And then think about the asbestos that could be in your home. So in addition to, if you're going to do any home repairs, it's always important to know, was there asbestos in your house, especially if you're living in an older home. Make sure that if you're doing any type of home repairs, make sure that you're not disturbing any asbestos-containing material. So talking a little bit about the risk that we're talking about here, it really depends on 3 factors. So we have the number of fibers that are ultimately breathed in by a person, how long you were exposed, and the number of times you were exposed. Really, these 3 factors tell you what type of diseases could potentially happen to you in the end. The unfortunate thing about asbestos is that once the exposure has occurred, the risk does not go away. This is in contrast to some other chemicals where you can have an exposure. Once that exposure stops, the risk goes away for any further diseases. Asbestos exposure, once it has occurred, the risk that you've incurred will stay with you for the rest of your life. And that's very important. Again, the symptoms usually don't manifest immediately. It begins 15 to 40 years after the exposure. And again, not everybody will become sick from having this asbestos exposure. So some of the diseases that people know that have happened, that are associated with asbestos, one of them is called parenchymal asbestosis. This is really a chronic lung disease, scarring of the lung tissue itself. These are an asbestos-related pleural abnormalities, so they occur when the fibers reach the lining of the lungs, which are called the pleura. These are what we call the non-cancerous diseases, and really they've only been seen in people that work in the mines or people that work directly with asbestos. There's no information yet if this is related to a children's type of. The cancers that could come from an asbestos exposure, lung cancer, which is very typical to what you would see if you were a chronic smoker, or other factors that cause lung cancer. And then the one you've always heard in the media is mesothelioma, which is a specific type of cancer of the lining of the lungs or the lining of the abdomen. So these are the 2 cancers that we could worry about many, many years down the line if significant exposure occurred from asbestos. So really, in summary, the asbestos is a mineral that was widely used in the industry. Only when it is disturbed is there a risk for health. So when you disturb it and you have to breathe it in, they could cause all the diseases that I've shown you before. Again, 15 to 40 years after the exposure occurs. And it is not certain that any of these conditions will develop, even if you are exposed. So sort of talking through what we know so far and how you have to go from the asbestos exposure all the way to the left here to your ultimate medical condition all the way in the right. There are many things that we don't know. What we do know is that there's potential for asbestos-containing material in the building itself, so that has been met. But we don't know where the disturbance was, what type of disturbance it was, how it was cleaned, so that ultimately determines how much of the asbestos actually reached the air. And again, the air is the important matrix or media that we need to investigate, and that can tell us what type of conditions we could see later on in life. Then the person has to breathe it in, so you have to either do inhalation or ingestion at this point, so it's very unclear what each individual person exactly did in proximity to that, the asbestos within the air. And then it has to reach the lungs, and there's a lot of personal factors on how many fibers and what the length of the exposure was. It really will ultimately determine what the medical conditions are that we can expect. So many of these things, such as we know there's asbestos-containing material, but we don't yet know, and we're going to get those reports soon, what the disturbances actually were and how that's going to infect the asbestos in the air, which we are going to measure with the new project designer. And then we'll have to make some type of assessments for how much asbestos was actually in the lung and what that could lead. And this will be this sort of pathway, this framework of how we think about this and how I'm hoping you think about this is also applicable to lead and silica as well. So the sampling going forward, we will work directly with Nova Environmental to implement the sampling for asbestos, lead, and silica. This will only capture, again, that potential for the exposure on the day the school was closed. So we really will only have very limited information how we can extrapolate. So it's really, we would like to know exactly what happened from the day the first construction occurred, but we really can't go that far back with the sampling. It would be very irresponsible for us to make any type of conclusions that far back. We could only get a snapshot of what happened the day the school was closed. So to give you an idea of the guidance that we've received about items taken home, there was a question at the last parent meeting, and there's literature out there that says that minors and people that work with asbestos on a regular basis, it could get trapped on their clothes or their belongings taken home, and there could be significant exposure to the families and to the people themselves away from the workplace. We don't expect this to be a big exposure in this case, but again, in the absence of the exposure data, we can't tell for sure. The guidance that we've received that the best action that you can do is to wash the clothes, wash the backpack, wash anything you can. If that's not possible, I leave it up to you, but the best way to do it is to discard the item. If you're not going to be sure if it's been asbestos containing, there is unfortunately no test that we can do to tell you exactly if there is asbestos in the items that were taken home. So the best thing to do is to take it away. So if you have any additional questions, again, we'll have the fact sheet that will be available right upstairs as you leave. And we will here, our toxicologists are here to answer any of your questions. And if there's anything we can't answer, then we go to our federal technical partners, and they will hopefully be able to answer all the questions that you have. And I just want to end with some contact information if you want to write it down. If you want to contact them directly yourself, you're more than happy to, or you can call us after the meeting. But thank you very much. Yes, so the number for the ATSDR will be on the fact sheet because that's for them. The PACE-U and our number are not. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Kathy Zacharias, who's a public health nurse with Kent County Health Department, to come up. We'll get this to you like you're more my height.
Hi there. My name's Kathy, and I actually work in the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program at the Health Department. So I've been asked to give you a brief overview about lead. We don't know, again, if there was exposure or not, but we wanted you to have the information so that you could decide how you wanted to proceed with your family. Common sources of exposure to lead are lead-based paint in buildings built before 1978, especially paint chips or paint dust from the paint. Contaminated soil or water can contain lead. And also people can bring it home from hobbies, job sites. There can be cultural exposures like traditional medications or pottery that's used, toys brought in from other countries, those types of things. There's different routes of exposure for lead to get into the body. We usually see ingestion here because lead-based paint is the most common source in our area. So that would be lead dust gets on the hands and then it gets transferred into the mouth by either like young children with their hand-to-mouth behaviors or sucking their thumbs, or having it on your hands and then eating without washing your hands previously. Inhalation can also be a way to have lead get into the body. We usually see this at job sites or back when there was leaded gasoline and there were lead fumes in the air. But that is another way. Also, if there is a pregnant woman who had lead poisoning even previously, it can be passed through the placenta to an unborn child. So I don't know if there's any, teachers here or whatever, but just to be aware of that. As far as at the school, we don't have reason to believe that there's been exposure to the kids, but we don't know for sure until all the testing is done. So we wanted to give you the information. So far, none of the kids who have been tested have come up with levels that are above the CDC level of, concern. So no elevated levels that we know of yet. I also wanted to let you know, though, there will be obviously communication with you as we do get the testing of the school itself. So I wanted to take this opportunity also to let you know just risks in your own home. So if anyone is doing any renovations or anything at their homes, knowing that these need to be done in a lead-safe way if the home's built before 1978. So there are resources available for that as well. There's a program in the city called Get the Lead Out where you can have assistance with paying for getting the lead out of your home, lead remediation. Also, you can look on the EPA website, and there's information there on lead-safe work practices. So just kind of a side note, since we are talking about this, that's another source that a lot of people don't think about is when they're doing some updates in their own homes. As far as the risk to health and potential signs and symptoms, young children are the most at risk, especially those like under age 3 because of the hand-to-mouth behaviors. Also, their brains are still developing very quickly at that age, and the blood-to-brain barrier is still open. Some of the things we can see are behavior and learning problems, hearing and speech problems, slowed growth and development. There can be effects to other organs like the heart, the kidneys. But often there are no symptoms of lead poisoning unless the levels are very high. So you can have generalized symptoms sometimes like nausea, fatigue, hyperactivity, or sleep problems, but they're really generalized. It can look like any other just, getting an illness type of thing. So really the only way to know for sure is testing. So we are recommending testing be done at the doctor, pediatrician, if you have, accessibility to that, because that doctor knows your child's growth and development, where they are. They also know their health history, but we are, like was talked about previously, we're offering free testing at the Fuller Clinic of the health department. It's walk-in, and it's during normal business hours, and there will be a sheet on the table with all the other information that gives directions to the clinic as well as what our business hours are. And there are some evening hours available as well on some of the Thursdays during the month. The first test would be a capillary screening. So that would be a finger poke. If that level were to come up as high, then it would be followed up with venous testing. So that would be a blood draw from the arm. Don't panic if there is a positive capillary, because there can be false positives with that. So really the venous testing has to be done in order to confirm that there was exposure to lead. If the child does come up as having an elevated blood lead level, they'll be contacted by the case manager at our clinic, and she can offer a home visit, case management, education about lead, helping identify where the lead might have come from, whether it's potentially at the school or potentially in the home, or if there's some cultural risks, or maybe someone in the family has a job that could have brought lead into the home. Those are other sources. So kind of identifying the source. Also, she can help with testing recommendations and follow-up, as well as referrals for things like developmental screening, things like that. So most kids who do have exposure to lead or elevated levels don't need any medical interventions. That's only necessary for levels that are very high, so above 45. But removal from the source is the key, so no more exposure. Also, there's continued monitoring of the blood lead levels until the levels are down, below the worry limit. So. We also do at the health department offer primary prevention visits for families. So that's a one-time home visit from a nurse. So it would be myself or our case manager, Amy, can come out to your home and talk to you if you have any concerns about lead, either in your home, or if you have concern that your child's been exposed to lead. we can come out and give you some education that way and resources and things. So we are leaving on the table information about the Kent County Health Department lead program. So there's a phone number on there and it tells all the different resources that we offer. So, you know, feel free to contact us if you have any questions about that. Just touching on the adult potential exposure. If there is an adult who comes back with an elevated level, that's also reported to the state of Michigan lab. And it's tracked through a database that's maintained by MSU. Also, OSHA will be notified if it's high because of the because it's a work-related potential exposure. So I think that's it. So hopefully I've answered your questions, and we'll know more once the testing comes back from the environment at the school.
Last but not least, Fred Kirkland Jr., who's an industrial hygienist from MIOSHA here, is going to talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities, and then we'll open it up for questions. So thanks for your patience.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Fred Kirkland Jr. I'm with MIOSHA, with our Construction Safety and Health Division, and I'm an industrial hygiene specialist. I've been with MIOSHA for 32 years, and a lot of that time has been dealing with asbestos-related issues. MIOSHA's responsibility is we are tasked with the enforcement of the occupational safety and health standards here in the state of Michigan. So we deal with employer and employee relationships. So we want to make sure that the employee's health and safety is protected in the workplace. So at this time, we have several open inspections with regards to the school district and some contractors that have conducted the work at Montessori. So those investigations are ongoing, and at the end, we'll have some conclusions once we wrap up and have what we call a closing conference with the school district and the employers to let them know the findings of those investigations. Also, we have several standards we're going to be looking at. We look at our asbestos standards for construction, and we also deal with HERA-related issues. HERA is a law that's an EPA law where the school districts are compiled to make sure that they have certain things in place with regards to that asbestos management plan. That management plan is something that's a living document where the district is obligated to make sure they have a designated person. They also notify district personnel, and it has response actions. Now, the response actions can be something that happens in a normal case with regards to removal, or it can be an accidental release. The accidental release is called a fiber release episode. So there has to be a response, and then a project designer has to develop a design for that response to be adequate. So that's all in the process. Also, we're going to be looking in other standards. We have our lead standards. We have our silica standards. So we'll be taking a look at those with regards to the contractors and to see if there's compliance with those. So with that asbestos standard, with the lead standard, with the silica standard, there's mandatory training requirements, mandatory air monitoring requirements, and work practice procedures and controls, such as wet methods, respiratory protection, protective clothing, decontamination, and housekeeping. So those are the main things that are involved with those standards. If the contractors have some of those things in place, that's fine and great. But if they don't, then there could be potential citations and monetary penalties, or we may issue some recommendations. But again, we'll evaluate all of that. It's an ongoing process, and we'll let those contractors in the district know our findings. Now, we do have a freedom of information requirement too. Well, not a requirement, but it's a process. So you could go through FOIA to get that information, but the best way to do it is at the end of our inspections. That way everything's complete and the information is available through the Freedom of Information Act. All right.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to open it up for questions. Jane, I may ask for you to help here. If you want to come down here, or we can just pass the mic around, if that makes the most sense. That way you guys don't have to get up. Here, we'll bring it up there.
Happy to do that.
Oh, sorry. We got a small enough group where I think we can pass it around a little bit.
Can I ask real quick?
Okay.
So I just, oh, God dang.
Sorry.
I wanted to make sure that I knew if we were going to be back in the beginning of the year so that I can kind of prepare my child for what might happen. Because she's already really upset about being in this other building. I did not expect that, by the way. So I'm curious if we're going to be back.
You know, again, it's a little premature to give a formal, official answer. At this point, we anticipate that everything will be back to normal for the next school year in the original building. Thank you.
Hi, John.
Hey, how you doing?
First of all, I'd like to make a comment. I am really proud of what you've done. You're good at your job. Thank you. I've only dealt with you in this response. I'm not really happy with what got us to this point, but I'm really proud to be a parent of this group. At the last meeting that we had, there were some things that were said that were let you know why diversity is important. A lot of different people had different things to say, and I appreciate that. Now, I got to tell you, we went into that last meeting open to take education, right? Ken, I've got real issue with the way that meeting went. It took you getting very frustrated at the very end of that meeting to say, essentially, it finally took a senior worker to recognize that the work that has been done from the very beginning was wrong. That changed what that meeting would have been. I was the third person to stand up with questions, and I feel like I ripped the bag open on construction knowledge. That withholding that was complicated. So with that, I have a question. Does GRPS have legal representation here today?
Yes.
What firm is that? And who is that, please, if you mind?
Gordon Van Weeren. And Sharon Pitts, who's our internal legal counsel.
And what firm is that with?
She's internal, and he's with Thrun.
Thrun? Okay.
Thrun? Sorry. Thrun.
Were you at the last meeting that we had on Saturday, 3 weeks ago? Okay. Did you at any point ask your administration here to be misleading or vague? Yeah. I know, but it's on recording.
So let me.
I know how this is going to go.
If you don't mind, because I think in Ken's defense, and I certainly understand your frustration. We understand. I think we got thrown into that situation. We were going with the best information that we had at the time. Obviously, there were some discrepancies, and we acknowledge that. And we want to acknowledge that at that time we were moving as fast as we could. And I think Ken and his team were trying to gather that information. We had hired a contractor. We expected they were going to be following the process, following the protocols. That's why we've hired that independent investigation.
Who demands that? Who makes sure that those protocols are followed? Because I understand what our bids say. We have one taxpayer-funded contractor, correct? Only one, and that's Chrisman. And did Chrisman make those cuts? They did not. Is that contractor? Sure. Who decides who we use? So, because my child and the children in here and my children's teachers have been exposed. And we had no choice, right? Because I can talk all day about how irresponsible I think Chrisman is. They didn't make the cuts. Now, in those bids, it says that each employee needs to be fully trained, as the gentleman from OSHA said. That's obvious. So back to that meeting, because I'm going to tell you, had this happened in December, I would have accepted this slip up. If one of these people in charge said, I did an inspection because it's my job to maintain these contracts, I'm sorry, but we missed it. We missed it for a month. That didn't happen. Thank God for the guy that knew what he was doing, right? Okay, if we can move on.
That's really, we want to have those same answers. That's why we have an independent investigation being done. That's what Raymond's going to help find out what went wrong, where were the process, where were the communication breakdowns, and we're going to be fully transparent on that. So we'll make sure to share.
I understand that.
Appreciate you sharing those concerns.
There has been Transparency, I guess, maybe is in the eye of the beholder, okay? Again, I appreciate what you're doing. I realize you have a job, and you're good at it. You're careful not to go too far. I get that. I appreciate that. So, I understand there's a daily construction log that came from Chrisman. Is that true?
That's correct.
That happens every day?
That's correct.
Who is supposed to oversee that? What are the activities that happened on that log? Another question, how many GRPS buildings do we have have this level of construction in them right now? Do you have an idea?
So let me go back to your daily construction logs. So those, we will be publishing those on the website. We've compiled all of those, so that's something that we're going to put out there for public review. Of course, we're analyzing that information or using that information to put together to show which rooms there was construction happening, when did it occur, what exactly occurred. So we'll make sure to have that available so everyone can see it. And ask your second question, the last one that you just, sorry.
Well,
Sorry.
I guess what I realize,
Sorry.
so like, obviously 3 weeks ago, we had a real effort to make sure that our kids can maintain their education, right? Every one of us in this room is giving more than an hour extra to every day, probably more than that when you can add drop-off, pick-up, everything, okay? I'm self-employed. Thank God I can just work into the night, right? Thank God I'm not taking vacation days, because that's what it used to be years ago. I would have taken, this is affecting all of our lives. I just want to make sure, I realize this is complicated. That 3 weeks ago, I've never been in a building with so many people that not one person wanted to be there. I get that. Not you, not me, not the guy that opened the doors that day. But here we are, okay? I'd rather be working, making money right now. Is OSHA made aware of our construction schedule? When we have these construction bids, we obviously knew that one full year, over a year ago right now, we had that company do the asbestos walkthrough, right, to determine what was done. So obviously we know that we have to get our ducks in a row. Are you made aware of what we're doing when?
With my OSHA, what we do on the asbestos side of things, if it's going to be an asbestos abatement project, and if it exceeds or equals 10 linear feet and or 15 square feet of material, then that contractor is obligated to notify us of that particular project 10 days prior to the work beginning.
Were you made aware of this project?
That I don't know. I would have to look up the information.
And again, this is, I got a lot of calls in that meeting that we had, okay? The year this building was built was in 1924, correct? I'm going to just guess that they used materials that were available in 1924, right? Oh, well, okay. Up until 1978, the way that we started this meeting last Saturday was there's a tiny little layer of paper that covers the tile that contains asbestos, and that's what that was. That's how that meeting started. Do you remember that? And it was made to minimize this, okay? What's directly behind that tiny little piece of paper?
Well, if I can go back to the notification process. Now, those are licensed asbestos abatement contractors that have to notify us. That information is also available to the public via our website. So if you want to take a look at that, you're more than welcome.
Okay. Would you then think that it's reasonable if you knew that there was something going on that you would do an on-site visit? Because like I said, in December, had this happened, I think all of us could say, man, that stinks. But at least we caught it, right? Because the difference between the 6 weeks, which is what was reiterated over and over again until halfway through the meeting, I guess the reason why I'm saying this is, if you're wondering, we've got a few cowboy parents right now. It's not very helpful, but if you're wondering why people feel that way, it's because we feel like we've been misled. So from this point forward, anything that feels misleading is just going to come with a lot of aggression, and we're motivated. So I just don't think it's a very good idea. From this point forward, let's just, whoever did it, okay? I don't think that you needed our push to get a different asbestos testing group, right? I mean, that's just logical. I can't ask the criminal to tell me how he broke into the house. He's not going to do it. It doesn't work that way. So, I mean, getting the company from Ann Arbor just seems like something we should have done that Friday night, right? We shouldn't have. I don't necessarily agree with having them not working for us anymore, but like, That seems obvious. You got to bring the other players in. Because otherwise, including the windows being left open. So again, if I could make two more things. I have heard, I had 3 people contact me after that Saturday meeting that we had in the medical world. They wanted to say, I'm a nurse, I've done this forever. All we heard was, we have no data. Well, here we go. Here we have 350 individuals who have been exposed for 3 full months. We have data. Are we going to, in an organized fashion, maintain that data? Because 15 to 20 years is a long time from now, right? So, and in this world, that is how damages are determined, right? So that's complicated. So have we made any contact with the university or someone in Michigan that might be willing to watch these kids for the next 20 years? That's just a comment that was made to me. And again, that's the beauty of our diversity. I never would have thought of that. And then one last thing, or I can wait. Anybody else want to go?
Do one more.
So, sorry, I got a lot here. Sir, from OSHA, were you at that meeting on Saturday? That 3 weeks ago?
He was not.
Okay, someone else was there.
Yep. His
And he left
colleague
quick.
who had done who was there on site, and I'm forgetting his name, Keith Langworthy. He was there. He spoke. He's also the one who had done their preliminary testing as well.
Keith spoke on that Saturday meeting? No one from OSHA
Oh, he
spoke
did not.
on that
I'm
Saturday.
sorry. He was there. He just didn't speak.
Right, and left immediately after. Okay, because I'm sorry to be frustrated. This really affects all of our lives.
Yep.
Okay, and so I think our teachers, again, Ms. Capello, thank you very much. You guys are working your butts off. Every day they are trying to tweak and change, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that.
I have a question about, since they'll be in that building, how can they move in more, to put stuff on the walls, to adjust the lighting, because there's fluorescent lights. I heard that they're not allowed to plug anything into the electric outlets. And also to form a library. My daughter put 20 books in her backpack this morning from home, and she said, I have to bring these because there's no library and we need books.
I've got Maureen. I'm going to look to Maureen for a little bit of help on this. We're going to take this feedback and we're going to continue to incorporate it. I know that they're working. It's a little push and pull to try to make sure that they have the space in the building so they can really get back to normal as much as possible. I'm just not directly involved with whether they can use light sockets and if we can change the bulbs and some of those kind of things. But we'll follow up on that. Maureen, is there anything you want to add or? Okay, good deal. Know that we're very aware of the concerns. I think that's probably one of the most common things that we've heard lately is more of, hey, can we have a little bit more space and can we get more timely supplies and materials? And we're very sensitive to it. We're aware of it. Our team will be communicating back with Maureen and her staff, and we're going to keep pushing on that, okay?
Hi.
I'm Marie Claire.
Hi, John Helmholt. My name is Marie Claire. I'm a parent at North Park. I've got a live stream here with about a dozen families that have some questions because they're not able to come to either meetings today, and they want their questions answered.
Great. Thank you for doing that again.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know it's a thorn in your side. That's okay. I'm all right. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have some questions about the library, of course, and I understand there's been some donations to the library. There's some totes that have been 1 through 3rd level books, but they're not able to be sorted right now. I understand we have eight E1 classrooms. Is that right? Seven. And there's books that teachers are afraid to use because we have like mixed classrooms, right, 1 through 3rd. So I understand some classrooms have just all first grade books, some classrooms have all the second grade, some classrooms have all the third.
Okay.
So right now there's some questions about when we'll be getting that. And I understand you just asked the same question, but that's something that someone specifically wanted to know is when can we, as parents, we don't have a lot of money, but we have time on our hands, come in and support with that.
So let us follow up on that. I know 3 weeks ago we had kind of said, hey, let's give space. I know Maureen and their team said, parents, give us a little bit, let us get settled, find out what they need or what they don't have. Know that I know you had shared with me some of the donation information. I had reached out to Maureen and Matthew, and so we will be regrouping to find out what's what, how do we distribute it, what is essential, what else is needed, and how do we help support that. We know that there's an active parent community, a lot of volunteers, a lot of people that want to contribute, and I think we're starting to get into the space now. We've been in there for a few weeks. We kind of know the rhythm now, the routine is there, as well as what is still needed. So we will follow up on that.
Great, and same as mine.
Hold on for just a second.
Okay. We'll wait for Maureen.
So the district did put forth a huge amount of books and effort to the classrooms, and those are being shared. That is a correct statement that the first, second, and third grade books are sort of on a rotation in lower L. To supplement that, we've had 2 relatively large donations, one that came in yesterday and another that's coming in next week. And I do have a meeting with Rachel, our librarian, to sort of get her on a cart and to start providing those library services. So, you know, and the teachers and I are working together on the resources that we have, and they're not what we had at Big North Park. I mean, we cannot replicate the library at Big North Park, and I don't think we should, because I'm hopeful that this is a temporary stay. So I think that teachers are doing the best they can under the circumstances, and that we're doing okay, right? Like, we have books in every classroom. We have a sharing schedule that's in place, and we're working on getting Rachel a cart, and we're working on asking for sort of unified that rolling donation, like a big box of books once a week, which we're sorting out and putting out into classrooms and sharing. It's a practical life skill to do that, and I feel okay about the amount of books we have in the building and how they're being used at each level.
Thank you very much, Maureen, and we really appreciate your being diligent. Next question from a parent, the art room.
I'm sorry?
We have an art room, right? Yes, okay. They're asking about supplies for that art room and what is available.
Do you want to chime in on that, or will that be okay? All right.
Same answer. You don't have to answer it if that's the case.
There is an art room. Ms. Picard does have supplies, and we are working on a rolling basis to get her more as she needs them.
Thank you, Maureen. We love you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Next question. Getting back to the Montessori style. If we are here for the rest of the year, and who knows what's next, when are we getting back to Montessori? Not just like traditional, but when are we able to get access to things that are, we all chose Montessori for a reason.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to defer to Maureen again. My understanding is that there is Montessori practices and methods that are being used. It is not full blown like it would be at the Big North Park building. But know that the teachers and the support staff, they're doing everything they can to make it as Montessori, more than Montessori light. We want to make it, as authentic Montessori method as it can be. And I think that they're continuing to work toward that. That's part of the follow-up conversation about what more do they need to support the teaching and learning in the Montessori method.
Thank you. Montessori is expensive, and we acknowledge that and just appreciate that. Next thing, someone asked about Girl Scouts. I'm not personally involved with that, but they want to know about Girl Scouts.
Space to use for Girl Scouts, as I had recall, it was at Wellerwood. Is that correct?
Yep. So the troops, if they had a building use form, are free to find. I can find a spot for them. The only Girl Scout communication I've had is that request to sell cookies during the parent conferences, which I did ask for them to find an alternative location around that. But the actual meeting is we can have in the building. I just need to connect with the Girl Scout leader and schedule, make sure we schedule that time and have those spots. So the Boy Scout, the two Boy Scout leaders reached out. They're meeting on Wednesdays. They have 3 different rooms assigned to them. They had their first meeting, I think, last week, and we'll have another one on Wednesday. But yeah, Girl Scouts are welcome to meet in the building. If the building use form was done at the beginning of the year, and we have those dates and times, and I can find them a room. They just need to give me a call.
There's another one. You might as well hold on to that. I'm sorry, Maureen. Student council talent and a talent show.
I have not received an email. I will talk to staff about that and sort of what's been, again, as a first-year principal, just learning the traditions and routines. I do know that the science fair is still on. The North Park Science Fair will happen for E2 and middle school. And I will talk to my staff about a talent show that was or was not, did or did not happen last year, and whether we need to do another. And those building request forms and the space that we will be using will get identified in partnership with the other programs in the building and my boss, Matthew Beresford. But, I think that it's a sort of same with the materials. This question about how much resource Montessori materials are expensive, how much resource do we put behind buying a whole bunch of materials for a 2-month window, hopefully, right through the end of May. And my answer is going to be, we're in the classrooms, we're observing, Montessori is happening, and teachers are working with what they have, and kids are learning. The same with the sort of traditions and experiences. So there's some yeses, there's some hard, yes, we're going to have a science fair. Is Kelly Kiernan going to be able to do her midnight sleepover for the health thing? For the heart research, probably not. We're probably going to modify that event. Might postpone it till August, till we're back in our building. Those decisions of this, like, how are we living lightly in this space and still maintaining a strong learning environment for our kids, is the balance that we're striking, and we're striking it in partnership with teachers and in partnership with the district. And I think we're doing a pretty exceptional job, considering the circumstances. I've been very proud of my staff and what our staff has been able to do. I'm also very proud of the district for supporting us in this move the way that they have, and helping us get our feet on the ground and get us what we need to keep learning going. So.
Thank you very much. I've got one more from the parent group, and then I've got one from myself. Next one is safety at drop-off and pickup. We have a neighborhood that we're sort of winding our way through, and our cars are doing pickup and drop-off. And we've noticed some safety issues with some cars in the neighborhood that some people describe as like a road rage situation, because we have a long, long line of parents that are doing drop-off and pickup. Do we have any updates on safety?
Well, one recommendation that we were following through on is making sure that the neighbors have been informed about the pickup and drop-off times and the bell times. That's something that just making them aware, asking for their patience and understanding. Just like we're also going to be asking the parents who are driving, please do your best to let people out of their driveways. Give space and room for those neighbors to come and go as best we can. We know that that's part of the challenge. Our public safety is continuing to monitor these conditions. Same thing with those parents. I know there were some concerns expressed about exiting GRPS University onto Fuller and how difficult it is to turn left,
yeah,
let alone right.
Been in several near misses
That's
myself.
Right. That's right. And that's where we will share the alternate routes. Sweet Street down to Ball. There are a couple different routes. If a left turn is considered to be dangerous, don't turn left. A right turn may make more sense. Some of this will be common sense. Some of it will be continuing to monitor to see what we can do to improve that. I know that over time they've been updating it so that pickup drop-off is getting smoother, more efficient. I know that they've cut the time down significantly. But I would look to Maureen. Is there anything that you want to add on that?
people do understand the car line. We have cards out, the orange cards with the names and the logo on them. And, you know, our car line consistently at the end of the day has come in under 425 in the afternoon. We start at 410.
Yeah, Silas has been timing it.
Yeah. We've all been timing it. It's been a great exercise in keeping time. And defining what working with, listening with efficiency and walking with purpose looks like. It's good practical life skill. So that on average, that drop off, it starts at 4:10 and we're getting done at the very latest at 4:30. So that average between 4:25 and 4:30, which it's half the group. So it's about 160, 180 every day that we're getting out of the building. And students are learning this idea of the different ways schools function, right? And this question of, we always did it this way at Big North Park, and when you don't have a field and when you're in a new building, is this how other schools do it? Yeah, this is how other schools do it. And we're going to get, just like we were good and efficient at Big North Park on the corner of Cheney and Elmdale, we're going to get good and efficient at this too. So.
Great, and I have one more for myself, I'm sorry,
Sure.
and then I'll pass the mic. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Well, and we do have, yeah. There are about 360 or 375 in the building. 200 of them either use a bus through Dean Transportation or are getting on the shuttle. The shuttle's been very useful for a lot of families and has helped. And then again, that 150 kids on the car line. And then there's on any given day, 10 to 20 that just walk right in and pick up their kids from the cafeteria at the end of the day too. So I think it splits very nicely into thirds. And I've been happy with how we've been able to do that. And then I can't speak to sort of the behavior at the end of the line in the residential area. And I would add what John mentioned, to just be peaceful and considerate and respectful, both of the folks in your line and the neighborhood folks that need to get through and out of their driveways and out to their, to their homes. So.
Thank you, Maureen. Yeah. Okay, this one is not for you unless you're from the EPA. In the month that this is announced, well, just under a month, I've been to the facilities building twice. Once, the first time, I was denied the ability to see the asbestos plan. It was something that's been in We Are GR since 1989 when Adhera had first started. I don't know what the acronym is. It's something having to do with the asbestos plan. Maybe the gentleman from the EPA can tell me what that means. But so the first time I was denied the ability to see it and said that I would have to file a FOIA request. And we've since worked that out. I've actually been down to the building again, and I've inadvertently become not an expert, but someone that's very familiar about what should be in that binder. And I've looked at 4 or 5 of them. This is the asbestos plans that are for each of the schools. And I understand that almost every GRPS school has asbestos in it.
That's correct.
Yes.
And it's important to share, because I know there was a comment that asbestos is still a common construction material.
It's in this building.
It's in every, it's in very commonly available construction use in buildings throughout the community.
So the thing that I'm a little bit worried about is that, that information should have been available to us. And it took a lot of emails and research and demanding to see things, and then figuring out that GRPS doesn't really have, the facilities building didn't really have an understanding of what FOIA requests were or how to file one. And so I've spent a very long and a lot of my time trying to figure out why we're not getting access to the information. And then once we are, after I'm like being a thorn in your side and many people's sides, why is it that now that we've got access to these binders and things, why is there so much missing? There's a lot of stuff that's missing. I have filed over 12 FOIA requests now for information that should have been there in the first place. Like, none of the training information is available at all. And training is required by Ken, and there's no way for me currently to get that information other than to file via a FOIA request. Sure. I don't know how much it's going to cost me, because that's a common practice to have to file FOIA requests and have them cost money. I don't know how much it's going to cost me, when I'm going to get it, if all the information that I've requested is going to be there about testing, or not testing, but training. I don't see any of this asbestos information events in any of those binders. I only see partial information about what's happening in North Park. There's just so much missing. There's an entire tab there that's completely empty about training. And I looked in all the other ones, and those are empty too. Okay. Those are required, as I understand it from Ahira, to be in that. So there's so much that's just like, really, it's really frustrating. And I don't even know half of it about what should be in there, so I don't even know what to request. I don't know if anyone has done this before, or can give me any insight of when we're going to get this information. And if we get it, it's going to be the right information that we are allowed to see. I'm no expert.
Sure, and I appreciate that. And you and I have had regular communication.
Yes, we have.
So we acknowledge that there's been a little communication breakdown. We work to build up systems so that in the event that there is a request to review this, it's made available in a timely manner. You can call and skip. Let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we also acknowledge that we took and scanned all those documents and are putting them out there. We are going back through and reviewing our compliance with Adhera to find out where we are or where we are not. Correct. And through that is informing our systems. Even the asbestos posting that you and I have talked about, that
yeah,
even
it's
that
incorrect. It's been incorrect
since
1989.
It's been the same thing we've been using.
Yeah.
That's getting updated. That information will be published in the Student Policy Handbook. It'll be in We Are GR. It's going to get much more widely communicated. We acknowledge that. We're going to continue to work with you. You and I, we talk, we're in regular communication, and I appreciate that. But I'm hoping that, I say that more as to acknowledge that we're sensitive to the concerns and questions. We may not have all the answers, and we may even stumble a couple times when we're trying to find the right process, which we acknowledge that we have. But know that we are committed to continuing to follow through with this, to answer all your questions, to go through with the responsiveness, and then to make that available to this community so that everyone knows that it's not just our response to Marie Claire. That's something that is available for the public and for everyone that's part of this North Park Montessori community. So we appreciate you pushing on us. Keep the questions coming. This is part of, we're learning through this as well. We acknowledge that there's learning and there's some systems issues that we need to address.
Absolutely.
There's some practices that we may need to change.
Yes, you do.
We fully acknowledge that, and we appreciate you questioning and pushing on us.
Thank you. And I just want to say one more thing. I really want to thank all of the teachers that have gone through everything that they have gone through to make things normal for our kids. This has been a massive disruption. And we are very thankful that there is a building for it. We're thankful that our teachers are there for it, and that there's such a strong parent community that is willing to try to make things normal, even though this is really scary for a lot of our kids. So I want to say thank you to that.
Keep that. I can get him.
My name is Mike Meiskens, and first of all, I just wanted to thank all the representatives of the different organizations that are here today, because the last 3.5 weeks have the education of the parents has been a real issue, and so being given all this information is really an incredible thing, so thank you. The testing that's going to be put forward, it was reassuring to hear some of the things that are going to be tested for. One of the things that I'm wondering if can be answered is, it's my understanding that a big component of why people get sick from asbestos is the size of the asbestos particles. Can someone comment on if that is going to be a test that's done?
Yeah, you're absolutely right that the size does matter. We'd have to talk to the project designer to figure out if we can do those tests. So we'll definitely do that.
Thank you.
Let me just Do a follow-up comment on that. So just to reiterate, that's part of the commitment we have from our friends at Kent County Health Department and DHHS. They've been in consultation with EPA. They are going to be making those recommendations along with our project designer for what those samples are. And so we acknowledge what you've requested, and I'm sure that's something that they will take into account.
Okay. This is about, you made the comment that there will be training for new Montessori teachers in July. What resources are there in place for the remainder of the year? It feels very frustrating as a parent to know that my child is being educated without materials and without a certified teacher.
Can you talk to a little bit of that?
I hear your concern, and again, I think that we're in an alternate location for 3 months, and we're doing the best that we can. And so, you know, that donation of materials that we got from GR Montessori and Ridgemore, the reach that we made with Stepping Stones and the materials that they were able to bring over, the combination of those materials and the sort of more traditional teaching tools that GRPS provided for us, I do believe is sufficient to get us through to the end of the year. The kids are in classrooms, the teachers are teaching, and we are working. I'm not sure I agree with this, with the idea that we need to reproduce a fully functional Montessori environment at GRPSU for all 20 classrooms for 3 months. I would rather that we focused our attention and our resources looking a little bit longer out in terms of that higher fidelity Montessori programming that I know GRPS is committed to at all 3 Montessori schools moving forward, which is why we have 7 of those 9 uncertified Montessori guides going to training, and that work happening. It does mean that we're, as teachers and staff and students and families, we are making a bit of a sacrifice right now this spring in terms of the integrity of the model, but teachers are in their classrooms and they're working hard at what they're doing, and I feel lucky to have the staff that I have committed to the work that they're doing. So I also, just as a side note, we also do have, in case folks don't know, we do have 16 people from all 3 Montessori schools going to a national Montessori conference next week, March 20th, and that team of folks, there's 7 from North Park, are very excited to get engaged with that work and come back reinvigorated and to take whatever they learn at that conference into their grade level teams and out into their the school community at GRPSU to do what they can to maintain that Montessori programming piece. But I want to be considerate about how we're using our resources in this move, and I don't want to mobilize and spend thousands of dollars on Montessori materials that we have at North Park that I do believe we're going to get back and be able to use in the fall. So I know that's hard for some families and students in the short term, but as a school leader, that's going to be my answer about that sort of concentrated effort and what direction we're going with that.
Okay. Hello. My question is about the asbestos testing in particular. Now, you said at the end of your slideshow there that you were going to be only testing as it was the day that we left the school. When Micro Air started and came in, they said they were going to do anything they needed to do to replicate the conditions that we were in, which meant sawing or bringing a leaf blower in and blowing the air around to test the air. So it's kind of unsatisfying for me for you to say, we're going to test it as it lay. So I'm hoping that I misunderstood what you were saying.
Yep, a little bit. So the technical guidance that we thought that we received from the EPA and the ATSDR really comes to not so much doing the testing itself, but how we can interpret the results of the test. We can do all the sawing, we can do the aggressive leaf
Do you plan to do the sawing? Because, okay.
I can't, no.
Oh.
I would rather not, but I think that the best way to do it is to do the leaf blower style, seeing how much we can agitate in the air. But it really all comes down to how can we interpret the data that we will receive.
Okay, I guess I still don't really understand.
So it really comes down to we can measure and how we can get the numbers, but what do those numbers really mean?
So are there more cuts to be made to install the AC as it was intended? I mean,
So are we going to test those, like while those cuts are being made?
Well-
Are we going to test?
because it doesn't help me
Directly
that much
after?
to know that, you know, in the 3 weeks that we've been out of school, there's nothing in the air and it's settled, or is it in the carpet? I mean, like, I came here looking for scientific data, which we don't have today. That's what I want to know.
Right, and that's sort of the big problem here is we don't know exactly how much exposure there was. We're going to do the best sampling plan that we can with the situation that's available there. I just want to set the expectation that it's going to be very difficult to recreate exactly what has happened in the past 3 months during the whole construction. So to set the expectation that not all those questions can be answered, even if we collect the best scientific data. That's the technical guidance that we've received, so we could not answer all the questions that people have.
So what is the cleaning process for our materials? Is there any sort of timeline as to when we could clean some of our materials? I mean, there's a lot of things I'm thinking in my mind that are made of wood, for instance, that could be cleaned and then shipped. But is this like post-testing, or is there a company that does the cleaning? Is there requirements for that?
So the cleaning for the exposure assessment purposes all would happen before any type of cleaning happens, and that's why it's very important to get the designer here. Any type of clearance after that will be through the AHERA process. Do you want to talk anything about that?
Yeah, that project designer is going to be responsible for designing that response action. And then part of that response action is the actual cleaning of the area. And typically what happens during that cleaning is wet wiping and using what's called a HEPA vacuum, high efficiency particulate air, where it takes it through a filter that's going to filter out any asbestos fibers that are on surfaces. So that's all part of the cleaning process. Yeah, that can be done too, but scientifically it's kind of difficult with fibrous materials. It works best on non-porous surfaces.
I have a follow-up question on testing. So we talked about, or at least some, I believe one or two of the regulatory agencies talked about some preliminary testing that was done shortly after being notified that this was an issue. Which agencies did that preliminary testing?
My understanding is that testing occurred once we were notified, once we were aware of this, and as part of the standard operating procedures, MIOSHA, Keith was in there and did his preliminary testing, and then DEQ was also in, and those are those items that we know we have some FOIA requests coming in. But again, no different than with the micro air sample. You know, we took our sample on Friday, he overnighted it. That was one sample. And so really probably what we're emphasizing is the process through the MIOSHA regulation where this project designer, NOVA, is getting brought on board. They're going to develop this project design plan that includes the rigorous and aggressive testing that will be done. That'll be done in consultation with our county and state agencies and the EPA, their task force. Mm-hmm. And so from there, we'll know what level of testing, the extent of the testing, what rooms they're going to be in. So part of this is also looking at those daily work plans, where specifically were they doing the construction, and based on the asbestos management plan, where are their materials in that room that they were doing that may have been disturbed. And might there have what time was that done? What was the cleanup that was done? So that'll all be part of the process. But we'll know more once we get the draft project design plan, and that goes through kind of the vetting with our county and state and federal agencies.
Yeah. So I guess my question comes in: how are those initial preliminary tests going to be weighted or evaluated next to this testing, more rigorous schedule done by NOVA, which is occurring, you know, who knows, multiple 6 or 4 to 6 weeks after the initial exposure. And so, you know,
so we don't have the
and
DEQ
after,
to answer.
You know, some parents are alleging some
'cause that's through
cleanup,
your
some
process.
open windows. You know, it seems like there should be some analysis done there.
Yeah, it's very difficult to go back and actually try to recreate what happened on the day and try to extrapolate any data. So the data is going to be with the cleanup process, and then testing after that cleanup process is complete. And they do what they call aggressive sampling. So once that cleanup process is complete, they'll use a leaf blower to kind of stir the area up, and while they're taking air samples to verify that the areas are cleared.
But it's accurate to say that there's already been preliminary testing of those air samples shortly after exposure, correct?
From the MIOSHA standpoint, we've taken some samples, but we don't. We'll hold those until after we conclude with all the contractors and have a closing conference.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect those samples to be released at present, but there will be, findings in those inspections or investigations that MIOSHA is currently conducting once it's been concluded, correct?
Yeah, there will be findings.
Okay, and they'll detail what those preliminary samples were and the amounts of exposure that was found in those initial examples.
Yeah, so I want to clarify that the samples, I was trying to put it in the slide, but the samples that they're talking about for the regulatory are the bulk samples. So there's samples of the materials itself.
Right,
So
prior to construction, correct?
Yes, so it would
Okay,
be
no, but I'm
a
talking
sample.
about, I'm asking if there was sampling done directly after exposure.
No. So we don't have sampling yet of the air or the dust,
So
those type of things. That's what we're going to work with micro.
none of the
Nova.
regulatory agencies responded with preliminary testing directly after being notified of exposure. Is that correct?
To my understanding, it's all.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
so MIOSHA's already indicated they have open investigations.
Yep.
So my understanding is part of that process, there is some testing and sampling done.
So what we were informed, that we held our meeting with Kent County Health Department and the 3 state agencies that Thursday after we were notified.
Okay.
We had our preliminary conversation that was largely learning about roles and responsibilities. In that meeting, the gentleman from the DEQ and the gentleman from the MIOSHA indicated that they had taken a preliminary sample. And those results, one of which we've already received via FOIA, the others we're still waiting for. We will be sharing that information shortly. But remember, no different than the micro air, where micro air, when they learned about it in that Friday, they went and they took an air sample test. They overnighted it. It was one, maybe it was more than one sample, but we got that result back. Where what really is going to drive this, though, is going to be this extensive air sampling and this project design plan that's going to be a much more thorough, in-depth analysis, complete with extensive sampling beyond just asbestos. And so I think, well, we may see some encouraging results, and I am dying to share some of that, what I know, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, no, that's understandable.
I can say that we know micro airs came back, and they're one sample in what was considered to be the hottest area, meaning that was an area they knew there was lead in that area that was cut into through the plaster. That came back negative. So but that's one sample, and that's not sufficient.
Yeah, I guess the comment in question is more about pointing out that there is existing data through regulatory agencies that have taken preliminary samples. And we're waiting for that. We're excited to see where that was done and the amount of exposure that occurred from those.
And I would just acknowledge what Fred had said. It's one of those where they may have gone in and done kind of that initial testing. Once we have all that information, hopefully within the next week or so, we'll be sharing what that data was. But I want to continue to emphasize, take that with a grain of salt, because even for us, even though we may be encouraged by those results, we got to go through the process. And this is where, through the project design plan, through the sampling protocol that our friends from the public health agencies are going to help provide, we're going to have a much better idea and a more comprehensive sampling in the different rooms, because most of those were just done in maybe 1 or 2 areas. Some were bulk sampling, which doesn't elevate to the same level as an air sampling would. So, yeah. So,
that's
but
what I want to differentiate between the bulk sampling that was done prior to construction and the sampling that was done in response to the regulatory agencies that got notified. There's a big difference there, and I think the talking point is confusing.
The bulk sampling actually was after construction, so the bulk sampling is basically a way to describe material sampling. So how much asbestos is in the material, whether that was before or after construction.
Gotcha.
So from the health agencies, we're looking at doing our best to replicate what would be in the air and to be able to use that data for an exposure assessment. So even a bulk sampling today would just be the amount of asbestos in the product still, and wouldn't be what was released in the air.
Right.
So that's the difference with that. So even as part of the regulatory process, which I am not a part of, going in and taking a bulk sample, even that Friday, still wouldn't talk about what asbestos fibers were in the air and what we could look at in terms of exposure.
Right, and then subsequently, there's regulatory agencies that came in and did sample testing. That's been stated, and we appreciate that clarity.
All right.
No, oh, no worries. Jennifer Gray, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. I'm a toxicologist. We'll be working with the project designer at Nova Environmental.
Good morning. My name is Ella Morgan, and got a few different things, but for sake of everyone's time, I'll try to make it quick. Is Larry Johnson present at this meeting?
He's not.
He's not. Okay. Can we be sure a few things are relayed back?
Everything we're gathering
Wonderful.
here, we will make sure
Just
that our
because this one's
our
for
team
him.
knows. Yep.
I would like to know what security cameras are available for footage for us to see in the big North Park building. For example, I feel like that footage would be very important to know in the investigation process. There's been a confusion of the timeline, when cuts were made, who was in the building, second shift, third shift, blah, blah, blah. I do know that GRPS buildings all have security cameras, so I think that that footage could be very valuable for us in this investigation process, as well as this upstairs window that has had evidence that remained open even after the building was quarantined for up to a week after. And so finding out who was really in the building, how things may or may not have been tampered with, that footage may help with some clarifying questions that we have. Also, there's been a lot of concerns and anxiety with parents, staff, and students at GRPSU with whose building that is and how that building is being made either a welcoming space or a you're on my turf type of space. So I would love to hear from Larry on how he's helping make it a welcoming space for elementary children versus it being a space where people feel like they're walking on eggshells or having anxiety when they see him walking down the hall. Other thing I would like to talk about is wondering the GREA's involvement in this process. Is there anyone from the GREA present at this meeting?
Mary Bounds, the president of GREA.
Wonderful.
Right there.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate that. I want to be sure our teachers are looked after. They have gone above and beyond in this situation. I'm wondering how you can help us be sure they're taken care of. Their time has been used outside of their contract hours. I've been told by their GREA teacher rep that they have been taking comp logs, but I also know from my past experience from being a teacher in the district for 13 years that comp time is used and allocated in very different ways. So just wondering the process of how that's being used. For example, the open house that we had at GRPSU, is their time being compensated for in a way that isn't going to be erased come summer break or things like that? Yes. Yep. Right. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for being diligent with that, because we want to be sure we keep these teachers, and we know that retention of teaching staff, especially high quality teaching staff, is a difficult issue that GRPS has. Right, which I understand that, but there, as you know, from the GRA perspective, there is also a true passive-aggressive bullying that happens with the adult mentality sometimes, and it's hard to know the difference as a staff member between what is mandatory and what is strongly encouraged, wink, wink. So just wondered about that. And then lastly, oh, sorry, I know probably other people die. Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, that's okay. And then the other thing is, as you could feel with the agencies here, with the district legal representation here, as parents, there's this level of trust that's been broken. And so we want to believe the transparency, and I'm wondering then, these meetings that you're having, or like you had mentioned, sir, about at the end of it all, this conference or this big meeting you would behold, is the district open to having a parent representative or these other agencies open to having someone in some of these closed door type meetings? I'm obviously not talking about from the legal closed doors. It's just if you're finding out information, it's sometimes to help rebuild the trust is helping in that transparency.
We're fully committed to that. We understand the trust factor. I think you've seen we've had a series of communications. We've shared outcomes of those meetings. We'll take that communication back to our team and talk about what more we can do. But literally, as we've had those things, and you saw we did it daily for the first week, we're kind of going to weekly. We'll continue to put that information out there. Our actions will speak louder than words. Let's do one more, if you don't mind, and then we're pushing 2 hours right now. So.
Okay, I got a couple quick ones. One, I recognize that things are fluid and moving, and I do have a lot of faith in North Park's administration and teachers to work through that. But just to kind of state it on the record, and maybe it's just my kid, but I feel like I've heard elsewhere that there's been a lot of reaction toward the level of control in the new facility. And the freedom to move and breathe and express themselves is something that they could definitely have better at the other building, and I recognize that being at a new facility, that's harder to do. But to the level that we can continue moving that direction, I think it would be helpful for the students to feel that freedom. Two questions that I have regarding the construction. First of all, what I hope is the shorter answer is, after all the testing is done and before we put the children back into the North Park environment, is the construction going to be finished?
That's a great question, and I'm kind of looking to Ken. I think our intent is to do as much, if not all of the work through the summer to get as much done as possible. Nod your head yes or shake your head no. Okay, so if we don't return till the fall, which is what we're not officially saying yet, but we're asking everyone to kind of brace themselves that the likelihood of us staying at GRPSU for the rest of the year is very high, and so that obviously part of that time frame and what may impact what may or may not still get done is going to depend on how quickly we can get that project design plan, how quickly we get the sampling protocol, they go through and do that testing, then the recommended cleaning, decontamination, and the clearance air testing. Right now we're estimating that at about 8 weeks. And so from that point, the contractors can't get in to begin to finish the work. Obviously, this was an example where, at least on 2 occasions, where the contractor was doing work in an area that had been identified as either having or may have asbestos, and there were protocols that were followed. And so from here, obviously, we're hypersensitive to that. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that continues, and then obviously our hope would be to have that work done before school returns in the fall.
Thank you.
So that's correct, and so first of all, part of the cleaning will be dictated by the project design plan, and so that's where the cleaning that starts with first this incident. And then as we go through, as things are, once the contractors are allowed to go back into the building, they're going to follow their process and protocol. If they're doing work in an area that's been identified to have either have or may have asbestos, they'll follow the abatement procedures. These are actually very common practice. This is not an uncommon practice. And so we have high expectations. This is what we expected from the beginning. This is what we expect of all of our contractors. And obviously there's a hypersensitivity now because of this situation. I don't know if we can answer that officially yet, but at this point we still have a contract, and that's what's anticipated.
Yeah,
sorry,
I would just hate to put our kids back into an unequal situation again. The more complicated question I had is understanding everything you've told us now. Can you connect for me the dots between we're only going to find out the answer for February 15th in terms of the level of asbestos exposure and how you figure out what the level of exposure has been for the kids since November?
I'm going to kind of try to summarize. I think that what I heard was that based on their communications with the EPA and their asbestos task force, that there really is not a definitive way to recreate what may have happened 2 months before where they cut into the wall. We were going to know as part of this review what rooms they were in, what work was done, what time it was done, and then the air sampling protocol that the project designer is going to be putting in his plan, that's going to go through our state, federal, county, state, federal agencies for review, and we're going to get the best, highest quality data that we can get, and we'll share it publicly. Do you want to share? I mean, there are some issues on the slide there that will.
Yeah. Right. It really will ultimately, hopefully, and there's no promises can be made, that it will tell you some type of a unit of what the risk, what you can expect going forward in the future, how likely maybe it will be the diseases that I mentioned, how likely it would be that those will be of significant concern. The other side of it could be that the exposure was very mild or very low, and that these are not concerns, or they could be very high, and that there is more concern for the people that were at the reading. We can't say for sure, you know, your kid will have this, or the worker will have that, but we can give sort of an idea of what the level of risk would be going forward from that given exposure on that given day. That it would not be a good idea to do that extrapolation. That's the guidance that we've received.
Gentleman here on the left.
I just want to say this is the worst Laugh Fest event I've been to this entire festival. So, question that I have is, has there been any disciplinary action against any of the employees of Chrisman or its contractors or GRPS for that matter in relation to the fiber release episode?
No, because it's still under investigation.
So, will there be?
I'm looking over to Sharon and Gordon to maybe give me a little bit of direction, but my understanding is that that's the purpose of this independent investigation, as well as that of the DEQ and MIOSHA, that they're going to go through, and each has a different role. One is about occupational safety, one is about environmental quality, one is our own district review to find out what happened, why it happened, what went wrong, and how do we ensure it doesn't happen again. So there certainly is going to be a level of accountability all the way across this.
So to be clear, to date, no one at any of the contractors or Chrisman has been dismissed or disciplined in any way in relation to this incident?
To my knowledge, these are still under investigation, so it's premature to take that action until we actually have the results of those investigations.
Okay. Great.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. We're going to be publishing this on the Facebook, on YouTube. You're certainly welcome to come back and join us at 6 o'clock tonight. And you're welcome to bring more questions. You're also welcome to come sit down and talk with me right now.
There's two different determinations. We want to make sure we're going into a safe building when we're all done, and we're trying to determine our level of exposure.
Yep.
So may I make a suggestion? You've got cuts to make. Take a paper plate, set it in the room, just like the room was wide open with no plastic. Make your cuts. This time with a face mask. Take that plate, test what is on that plate. Tell us the components of that. What percentage is asbestos? Silica, lead. That's what we're talking about. I get, dude, thank you for coming. This isn't your mess. I get that. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate what you're doing. That's what we're saying. Does that answer it, guys? We want to know, what did it look like?
So,
every morning we came back in and the dust
So
was
we
still
heard
settling.
that. That's why we actually took that from that meeting a few Saturdays ago, and we went to our friends at the public health and the experts and said, this is what the parents are asking for. They took that information to their, what's the name of that task force, the asbestos task force at the EPA. And that's where the recommendation came back right from currently.
At the asbestos, though.
We are
I would like
recommending
a report
asbestos,
on the
silica, and lead.
entire
Asbestos, silica,
contents of
and
that dust.
lead is what we, the district, have said we expect. They are running that through their sampling
Until
protocols.
lead and silica was mentioned in the newspaper, it was not discussed. Okay? Until it was discussed. So what I'm saying is that test possible? Can we take a test of the contents of the dust, all of it? And can we be told what our children ingested for that time? Because I get the asbestos is tough, right? I get that. And so the way that I explained this to some of the parents to try to calm some people down was, if you take a glass and it's full of sand, only a few of those specks are actually the asbestos, right? But my issue is, what of the rest of that glass do you want to ingest? That's my problem. So I know we're hung up on the asbestos, and I know that that's what the commercials on TV are for. But there's a lot more danger than just that. So can we...
So I think we've said, I've certainly said it today. We put it in the communication that went out. We are committed to testing beyond asbestos and have asked for direction on the sampling protocols for asbestos, silica, and lead.
I hear that we can't recreate. That's what I hear. I'm saying I believe we can.
Okay. Well, duly noted. We have the experts here. We are going to ask them to revisit that, and we'll see what we can and can't do. Again, I'm not an expert. We're going to share that information. We hear you. We understand. We're going to take it to the experts, and we'll come back with recommendations. All good. Thank you again. We appreciate you coming out. We'll continue to communicate. Anything you need, you know how to go. northparkinfo@grps.org. Communications 819-2149, or certainly you can communicate with the front office. You know what? I have not asked about pickles lately. Do we know about pickles? Hold on. All right. All right. We'll follow up and find out the state of pickles. Thank you.